What's up, audio fam? CJ here with another plugin review for you. This time we're talking about the DBX 160 plugin from Waves. This plugin is modeled after a real-life hardware unit, also called the DBX 160. It was a very popular compressor that came about in the 70s and has since been used on many records, particularly on drum tracks, but of course you can use it on anything you want. There are no rules. So I'm going to dive more into that here in a second, but if at any point during the video you would like to check it out for yourself, for your convenience, I have placed a direct link to it in the video description, so feel free to click on that anytime. With that being said, I'm going to play you a sample of this song I have pulled up here, and I will turn the DBX on and off throughout playback. I did end up testing it out on drums just because even Waves themselves claims this to be one of the best drum compressors ever. So pay close attention to what it's doing to that. And I'm just going to close this to save on CPU power, but you will still be able to hear it. So as you can hear, it brings out some more presence of the drums, but also to my ears it sounds like it even brings out some more of the brightness or the high end of it. In fact, if you notice here, I even ended up cutting some of the high frequencies afterwards with EQ, but yet it still has a pretty nice polished sound. So Waves worked hand in hand with the DBX company to make sure it sounded as authentic as possible to the original, but they've also added some bonuses to the plugin that were not on the original. So let's dive into this plugin, see how it works, and see how I used it. So I'm going to start with the meters here. The input meter will show you the amount of signal that is going into the compressor, which you can adjust with these input knobs down here. And then of course it will be displayed on these meters right here. I just ended up leaving this on default because I felt like there was enough signal being fed to it already. If anything, I could have brought it down a little bit to 0, but it wasn't going over or causing any distortion, so I was fine with it. Next thing you would look at would be your gain change meter right here, which will show you how much of your signal is being compressed. There's not a right or wrong amount of compression you want to do. Whatever your taste is, go with that. For me, I had it being reduced just shy of 10 dB at the max. And the knobs you would use to determine how much compression you get are both your compression and your threshold knobs. Compression here adjusts your ratio, which by default is set at a 4:1 ratio. So the higher your ratio number is, the more compression you will get, and the lower your ratio number, the less compression you will get. Then your threshold knob here is basically telling the DBX at what volume do you want it to start compressing your signal. Say for instance your threshold is set to -5 dB. That means that the DBX will not turn down volume until the audio goes over -5 dB. And turning the knob to the left will lower the threshold, resulting in more compression. And turning the knob to the right will higher the threshold, resulting in less compression. And it has these handy LED indicators telling you when your signal is above or below the threshold. So what should your ratio setting be? Where should your threshold be set at? These are the wrong questions to ask. What you really need to be asking yourself is, how much gain reduction do I want? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. If you want to be subtle and only compress up to 3 dB, or you want to be extreme and compress like 20 dB, that's all up to you. Just don't get tripped up in worrying about things like ratio or threshold, because they really do operate very hand in hand. You could have a ratio of 2:1 or of 12:1, and still possibly get the same amount of gain reduction depending on where your threshold is set at. So bottom line, just worry about your gain reduction and relying on your ears to tell you what's right. Then finally, you have your output meter. You would use this to compare it to your input signal and then try to match them. So in other words, whatever your input meter is reading, you want your output meter to read the same thing relatively. And you can do that by adjusting your output knobs right here. That would be the quote proper way to do it, but sometimes rules are made to be broken. If you end up making the output a few decibels louder than the input and it sounds good, then who's to say it doesn't work? So that is the basics of the compressor, but now I'm going to go over some of the bonus features of the plug-in version. So whenever I use the DBX on my drums, I noticed that it seemed to take away a lot of the low-end energy of the kick. As it turns out, after reading the manual, I learned that there actually is a function on the plugin that will compress the low end much less, and that's going to be this HPSC, these buttons right here. It stands for high pass sidechain, and when it's activated, when it's lit up like this, it will reduce the amount of compression on your low end, resulting in more bass. However, I did not know that when I was mixing with this plugin, so I did find another way to restore some of the bass within the plugin, and that was by adjusting this mix knob right here. This is a function that allows you to blend the original signal that you had before compression alongside with the compressed signal that the DBX is producing. Pretty cool feature, and this is a common practice in mixing actually. It's called parallel compression. And the DBX 160 makes it super easy to do that with this mix feature. By default, it is set at 100%, meaning the compressed signal is fully taking over the track. And if you did want to bring back in some of the original signal, all you got to do is dial it back however much you want, like so. And the last thing I will mention today is the noise option down here, which is meant to emulate the humming noise that the hardware units produced. So if you did want to add some dirty analog sounds to your tracks, the DBX 160 plugin has that feature included just for you. But that is basically the DBX 160 compressor, guys. If you're interested in purchasing this plugin from Waves, just as a reminder, I've placed a link in the video description, and it would mean so much to me if you were to use that link. It's an affiliate link that is traced back to me, and simply by clicking on it, you're going to be supporting my channel in a big way, and you'll allow me to continue creating free content for you. But that's all for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and happy creating.